For us, you can be entrepreneurial without being an entrepreneur. You identify issues, big or small, in your daily life, systemic issues, but you decide to take action.
Welcome back, everybody. Rich Brubaker, founder of Collective Responsibility, here today with another episode of the Mission Driven Podcast. Through this podcast, I'm speaking with mission-driven entrepreneurs, academics, investors, accelerators about the work they're doing to deliver on the mission that they're on. It generally starts with looking out their window, their community, their city, their economy, whatever it may be, realizing there's a challenge, environmental, social, governments. And so through this podcast, all we're doing here is sharing the lessons, sharing the experience, trying to create inspiration and equipment so that you, the viewer, the listener, can go a little bit further along in your path. And so with this episode, I'm extremely excited to be joined by Dinh-Long Pham, who is a proud French-born Vietnamese supporting youth to achieve greater impact for the SDGs. He's a community builder, facilitator, and happy podcast host with a passion for youth empowerment, engagement, social justice, and climate change. He's currently working at the UNDP, working with young social entrepreneurs, leaders, and climate advocates across the Asia Pacific through a range of programs, which we will talk about. And why I brought him on here was that he's specifically working with the youth. And I can see from his profile pictures, from the work he's doing, this is high energy work, very inspirational, trying to engage, inspire, and equip the next generation of young leaders, future leaders. We don't really talk about the youth, particularly high school, college, as being entrepreneurs so early. But a lot of the work that he's been doing, we'll talk about in the sense of you can inspire people, you can empower them, you can equip them, but then let them find their own path. And so with that, Dinh-Long, it's great to have you here. Welcome to the podcast. It's really great to have you with us, to talk about your work, the story that led you into the work, especially, and the impact that you're seeing.
Yeah, thank you so much, Rich. Very, very excited to have this conversation with you.
Maybe as a starting point, just tell us a little about yourself and the mission that you're on.
So my name is Dinh-Long. It's a Vietnamese name. That means Temple of the Dragon, because my parents are Vietnamese, but I was born and raised in Paris. But yeah, I always like starting with that because it's a big part of my identity, just the French Vietnamese aspect, which took me a long time, if not my entire lifetime, to just figure out what does it actually mean. Graduated in business management and marketing. And the fun fact is I went to a business school and I had no idea what was a business school or what you are supposed to do after business school. While I could see all of my classmates, they all already knew exactly what they want to do. They want to go to the BCG, to McKinsey, to EY, all these companies. I just started to naturally go towards the topics or the student clubs that I found interesting or I found happiness. I would meet the student club who was leading the social entrepreneurship or the sustainability club. They were so happy. They were so passionate about the topic. They did all the internships in climate change education, and they were so happy to speak about the experience. So I just hang out with them, selected all my classes about climate, sustainability, social impact, like everything that the school had. And I think naturally I just gravitated towards that. So when it came the choice to choose an internship, a first job, for me, it was so obvious to support people, young people, to understand what causes they care about and how they can start taking action. And for me, yeah, my mission is really, we all can have an impact in this world, but how do you unlock this? How do you reconnect people with their own power of action?
When did this become your mission? What catalyzed you into building a career around it?
I mean, I understood very early that, okay, when we are 20, 21, 22, I don't have a lot of skills. The only thing I can do is to meet a lot of people and understand, try to see how I can support them. And I just I have to find an internship, 6 months. One of my friends from the sustainability club told me, hey, I just did this internship in Hong Kong. You should try. They are recruiting my like the successor. I applied. I ended up in Hong Kong for 6 months, an accelerator for tech for good startups. And I was like 22 or something with no skills and supposed to support founders who are 30. I'm like, well, what can I do? Except just being helpful, speaking with them, spending time with them, and just helping in anything I could do. But very similar to what I was already doing everywhere I would go. But then I realized it could be a job, actually.
But when you're taking up these early opportunities, were you thinking, I'm going to learn this skill, I'm going to learn this thing, and that will help my career? Or were you just going around and just being more opportunistic and being more open to the experiences?
I really had no plan. I had no idea. Like I just want, for me, I just wanted to be in the social impact sector, have a job that has a positive impact on the world. And even the concept of youth, it was not very conscious in me. I think it's more that everywhere I went was mainly young people. And yeah, I think for me, it just no, just going with the flow. Someone tells me something, I do it. I don't really think about things.
Why not just go work for a big nonprofit and make your life a little bit easier? Because you can have a big impact there, you can have a career, but why go to the startup scene? And what was it about the energy or about the flow there that was attracting to you?
At the very beginning, I was open to pretty much anything. So yeah, I was, we're just speaking to everyone and trying to see what would fit. And then actually, as part of my business school, there was one optional class which was on social impact measurement, and you are matched with one social entrepreneur for a few months, and you join them on the field for 2 months. And then I spent 2 months with a small group with a social entrepreneur in Benin, and they are trying to build a mini grid, electric grid. And just speaking with them, I saw they had so much passion. It was more than a life purpose. They would never give up. They were so driven, and I'm like, wow, I want to work with more people like him. So me, I was like 2 months with them, so much inspiration every day. I was like, oh, this is so good, and I just want to continue doing this.
And then after school, you had a number of different positions where you're working with other entrepreneurs. Were you just drawn by the topic of the entrepreneur? Were you drawn by the way that you could help the entrepreneur? Like, how did you approach? Because again, you're only 21, 22 years old. You got 2 months of work experience with entrepreneurs. How did you approach the next positions and what did you look to bring to each one?
I didn't really see myself as a founder back then, but more as part of the ecosystem, like entrepreneurship support organization. I came in, so I worked in a sort of community space for change makers. And we had, I mean, our vision, right, to get different groups, so the entrepreneurs, the change makers, like whoever, the citizens. I met a few which were all inspiring and didn't need our support. But at the same time, we had so many young graduates who would come to our events and they would say, okay, I went to business school. I don't want to work in a bank. I want to do this and that, but my family doesn't agree. And the thing is, me back then, I also didn't know, right? But I just had so much exposure from all the entrepreneurs that I would say, okay, what would they do in this situation? And I would just, yeah, and we'll just organize trainings, events for all this community so that they can, yeah, just take action, explore what topics they care about. And it started to become more and more clear.
What are you seeing? Like what's driving them to say, I want to do something? Is it because they're worried about the end of the world or worried about climate change? Or is it because they just really hate the old system? Like what drives them into this mindset to take this risk at this time?
I think everyone has their own journey, which is related to looking for meaning, right? I mean, for me, one of the most powerful trigger is to have role model exposure. When you meet someone, they do good work, they do social impact, or you watch a movie or a video or role model that you know or might not know, right? But they inspire you to do something. For me, another trigger can be just a personal issue that you faced. You were a victim of bullying, so now you want to make sure no one else is getting bullied. Or you just go to your favorite beach in anywhere in Asia and you're just so sad with all the trash. And again, some people might not see it, some people might not care, but some people might have a deep connection with what they see in the nature. But then again, I feel like, I know for me, the classic is, in many parts of Asia, there is a top three, right? My kids, you'll be engineer, lawyer, doctor, and you need to confront that with your personal aspiration.
You work with startups and accelerators for a bit of time. Now you're at UNDP, which is a very different organization than a startup or an accelerator. And I'm curious, why did you make the transfer into this big organization? And what is the work that you're doing with them?
2, 3 reasons helped me. The first one is I had one of my future colleague is a friend who's very like me in terms of personality, aspiration. And if she's there for a few years, maybe I can also go and try. And the second, I think I wanted to really see the transition from, okay, small organization to big organization, very local work to regional work. When I joined, actually, I joined UNDP 5 years ago. So basically, I'm sitting in the youth team of the Asia Pacific office. So the office is in Bangkok. And I joined back then where the main program of the youth team was a youth and social entrepreneurship program. So I was still in what I was doing before. And back then, the role was to support young social entrepreneurs at every phase of the journey, from the problem definition to, sky is the limit.
So why is UNDP so focused on youth when it comes to this? Like, I kind of view youth as, if you're teaching, it's a very inefficient way to develop entrepreneurs. What's behind these programs and why the focus on youth for UNDP in the sector?
I think the reason is the youth population in Asia Pacific. Many countries, depending of the age range, right? But let's say 35 in many countries is like 60, 70% of the population. So it's seeing that as a driving force to address the SDGs. And now back to your question, what do we actually do? I try to summarize, it's a bit complex, but I'll summarize in 5 points. Bear with me. So the first point being the social entrepreneurship program. So it's called Youth Collab. It's collab with UNDP and the City Foundation. The second pillar is called, I'm sorry, I will have all these acronyms, but it's called YECAP, Youth Empowerment Climate Action Platform. Another pillar is on leadership, skills development, entrepreneurial mindset, all these skills that will help you throughout your life, but that we don't learn at school, unfortunately. For us, you can be entrepreneurial without being an entrepreneur. And for us, being entrepreneurial means you identify issues, big or small, in your daily life, systemic issues, but you decide to take action and you know how to do so. And then we'll have different, I think the main process that we try to follow here is we'll have different curriculums, workshop curriculums on different topics, on leadership, on storytelling, on climate change, on SDGs. And they learn so many skills there, which are all transferable skills that they can use in their advocacy, in their work. And actually, many people who go through this process, they do organize a lot of workshops.
Are they self-selecting? Like, how do you reach these youth?
We open it for everyone, basically. Which I think for me is the beauty of it. Everyone can join. And there's different channels. I think there is our own channels, our own workshops, people join. But I think more and more it's working with the partners, with the schools, the universities, pretty much anyone who work with young people. And the last channel is through the youth themselves. I think many youth who join, they become the best ambassadors of the project.
How many youth do you engage, say, on a yearly basis? How many are really becoming entrepreneurs and how many are just becoming innovators or collaborators?
We have around between 1,500 to 2,000 young facilitators in the network who facilitated 2,500 workshops for 170,000 young people in the region. But recently I was speaking with one of our most amazing volunteers from Pakistan. His name is Shersha. And he was telling us, once he understood that it was a train-the-trainer process, he had an excuse to speak with partners, to go to his university, to ask for a room, to train people. Before that, even if he wanted to do it, the university will be like, but who are you? Like, why you? But now I have the movers training, I have the certificate. They matched me with a mentor. So he ended up doing 100 workshops. As we see, it was a bit of a springboard for him. Now he created his own organization called Skillistan, where he's doing his own trainings for young people in Pakistan. I think for us, it doesn't need, many times it's not a full-time project that they start, right? I think in the region as well, it's a region where everyone has like so many things at the same time. You have a full-time job, but in the weekend, you have two other side projects. So we do see that a lot. So I think, I think it's a bit difficult to give exact data on that, but it's part of the impact we want to have. It's creating a pathway, basically. I think for us, the Movers program, as if I take a metaphor, it's like a high school generalist. You have the entrepreneurship topic, climate change, employability, and whatnot. But then after they join the Movers program for a few years, they feel confident, they have the skills. Okay, they can go to the entrepreneurship university, to the climate university, to the leadership university. So it's really creating this whole pathway.
What's the age range? And then also, how often are they participating in, say, a training or a workshop, and how often are you engaging with them along these multiple years?
So the age range in general, it's from 15 to 35. We follow the national definitions of youth in each country. So in Nepal, in Solomon Islands, it's until 40, for example. We have, let's say, ongoing events, activities. I mean, for every pillar, for the Movers program, it's on an ongoing basis. I think at regional level, what we try to do is create new curriculums, I mean, workshop topics from the insights and feedback from all the young people. I mean, we started 3.5 years ago. We only had the topics on what are the SDGs, what is social entrepreneurship. But the more we did workshop, everyone was telling us, what is climate change? I want something on how to use LinkedIn. I want something on leadership. So now we have around 27 curriculums which are published. They're all open source, by the way. Everyone can use it, adapt it. And we have, I think, 25 more in the pipeline. For me, the beauty of the program is the more you stay, the more you get something from it. It's nice for people to join the 2-hour workshop, but I think the main benefit is when you become the facilitator and you do more and more workshops because you practice, practice, practice. Yeah, it's mainly, yeah, there's always things happening. I think because it's a very decentralized model, there are workshops happening a bit every day somewhere in Asia Pacific.
What do you find to be like the key success factors or principles that when you're designing the curriculum or the flow of topics or the way you deliver it, what are some things that you've learned will lead to higher levels of success and ongoing engagement?
I think for us, it's very important to involve young people in anything that we can do. That's why we ask all this feedback. It's not only to evaluate our program, but it's to get insights on what they actually want to learn. All the curriculums have been developed because there was a demand. We try not to do something because we have to, but we try to justify it from the demand of the youth community. But it requires being flexible. I think there's also, I don't know, but being agreeing to, okay, you cannot impose stuff because we want young people to have ownership of this program. We see it as a youth-led community. And most people in our team are under this 35 or even 40 years old. So yeah, how to make this program have ownership for young people. And the second is, I always joke about it, is it's related to the community, but it's many people come because we provide a certificate, but they stay because they make friends. And then they just join the workshop with their friends.
At the end of this program, what do you think the power of the youth is to be change makers? Like, is this through this program, through your work, are you finding that they're right away ready to go? Or do you find that they need a lot more skills, they need the time, and then when they do, like that's your role is to get them ready for when it's their time?
Yeah, I think we try to make them ready as much as we can. But we understand that, I mean, youth empowerment is very complex. There's so many factors. It depends on a lot of things. So we also humble enough to know that we might contribute, but they once they start to be in this path of self-leadership, taking action, being proactive, they will look for other opportunities everywhere as well. And yeah, I think every time we try to see every time we see gaps, we try to have a workshop on it or to do something about it. I mean, it's mainly what I was mentioning earlier, on the networking, on the startup project, to go to an official conference and bring their advocacy to a different level. It all comes from what we have observed through our programs. But I think, yeah, it's more every time we see a gap, we try to address it to some extent, but being humble enough so that we also tell them, yeah, just explore. There's so many things happening in your country, in your locality. At least now they are in the direction, they are on track. They're on track, to do amazing things.
Speaking of track, where are you headed from here? I mean, you've been at the UN for 5 years now, you've been doing this work, empowering youth. What have you learned, if you look back on this track, what have you learned about yourself? How has this helped your career? And where do you see yourself going forward?
I think that as the year pass, I also refine what I like to do. But then I also understand I have many different passions. I think everyone has so many different tracks that they could explore. But right now I'm on this track. I also explore, I mean, outside of UNDP, it's always linked to UNDP anyway, but you were mentioning you were teaching for MBAs, right? So I'm also teaching in Phnom Penh for them, like a master in entrepreneurship. So I teach on entrepreneurial mindset, basically. So I have like 20-hour class and I test a lot of workshops and methodologies there, actually.
Okay, so if you were talking to one of your students who's in your class now, and you're like, "Oh my God, Ding-Long, I'm so inspired by your work. I want to do what you did." What are two or three pieces of advice you'd give them as they move along in their career?
I think when we are young, the good thing we have is time. You can spend time supporting people, even for free. It's what I did for many, many years as a student. So I think and the second is, yeah, just get started. I think for me, there's always something you can do without funding, without budget, without knowledge, without skill. You can always get started on something with identifying these 5 first steps that anyone can do, advance in the next step of your journey. But at the same time, I have like 10-year goals. I'm a bit crazy, but for me, it's very useful to think, okay, 2024, where do I see myself in 2034? It's gonna change many times, but I feel like sometimes we don't think about this. Like from my observation, many young people are because I feel like future thinking is a great skill to have, but it's very hard to do actually. So it's a muscle to train. So forcing yourself to think a bit long term, and then you reverse engineer to today and what you can do there.